And tonight, some really intense Doctor Who debate that will get you behind the sofa as we go live with the Satire channel.
Hello. Sylvester McCoy's tweet advises Doctor Who fans not to vote for Donald Trump. David Tennant wishes a senior politician, now the leader of the opposition in Westminster, to shut up. Nigel Farage of Reform says Doctor Who has been ruined by the BBC. Russell T Davies says we need an emotional doctor for these dark political times. The TV ratings for the last series of Doctor Who seem to limp under the baggage of political preaching. Our specials had woke messaging on pronouns and gender ideology. Sharon D. Clark says Doctor Who missed a trick not having a white woman, brown woman, and black woman in the TARDIS. Oh, make it stop. My God. Have various actors, celebrities, producers, showrunners, and writers dragged our beloved show, usually renowned for its sci-fi escapism, into the political spotlight, beaten around now like a political football on the political battlefield? Has Doctor Who been compromised too much? Now seen by many as a totem for leftist woke messaging and a DEI role model in broadcasting. Great debate tonight, I have to say. Massive debate tonight. My God. And you know, it's a subject you keep coming back to in different ways, but my God, I think we've hit that kind of perfect spot now where there's an awful lot to talk about. So get yourself buckled in, because I think this is going to be a tasty one. I tell you, great debate tonight, starting with a direct intervention into the 2024 US presidential election itself by the Seventh Doctor. But we will also look at the politics in these media organizations like the BBC, ITV, Disney, and how they are affecting output. We will also look at the political stories in Doctor Who, if they were always worthy, valuable, well-woven into a narrative, or too preachy and awkwardly used. We've got our Time Teaks Roadshow back, our segment with a Time Lord Politics special. And on top of that, as if there was not enough, and I tell you what, we're cramming it in tonight, we might even discuss how Doctor Who has represented Americans and arch-capitalists, and whether RTD is falling into other tropes that are problematic. Van Staten in Dalek, Jack Robertson in Arachnids in the UK seem two particularly provocative characters in their obvious, deliberate links to the new President-elect Trump. So it's buckle down. It won't be quiet. It won't be safe, and it won't be calm. But I tell you what it will be. It will be a debate of a tea time. So fresh from voting and participating in that US election, unlike Sylvester McCoy, we have Michelle and a new guest to the Sensphere. So if I clear the screens, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? So good to see you again, Michelle, and welcome first time to us, of course, Matrix Lord.
Thank you so much.
And just to warm you up, I need to show you this. I mean, obviously, everybody, I'm sure you do know Matrix Lord, but there he is, and he's a writer. Are you still number 4, number 5 in your gaming charts?
Number 5 on my way, number 4.
There
in
you
America
go.
On
Wow,
PlayStation
brilliant.
profiles, yeah.
Oh,
Cool.
yeah. You talk about diversification. You have a diverse portfolio there. That's really
Yeah.
good. So there you go, everybody. That's Matrix Lord. If you haven't come across him, I know he's on various podcasts and plenty of his own.
Brilliant.
But I was going to, and of course, I will show Michael in a moment. But there's, I think Donald Trump, he won the election.
I could have done a Photoshop even better than it's good. But I love the color of his face, though. But that is good. I do like that.
It's hard to temper his face, but no, yeah, I know. Well, there you go. I mean, Michelle, he suits the color, doesn't he?
Well, okay. To do bronzer, here's a trick: take the bottom of your hand and see if you can blend it in well. And that's how you go bronzer. You gotta get the right. You gotta get the right skin tone.
Yeah. I thought it was a good photograph, and then I thought, it's so good. Skin tone is very hard on this one. So
that's what my mom taught me. She used to sell Mary Kay Cosmetics, so you just test it on your bottom of your hand.
Now, of course, we've got Michael on, Claude, and of
Hello.
course,
How are we doing?
One Sci-Fi podcast. I was recently on yours, wasn't I, for the 200?
Yeah, it was only a couple of weeks ago. We got to episode 200, which was great. And we obviously had Sci-Fanatics as well. And we had a good talk about things in general, Doctor Who, the last 5 years of sci-fi, and how things we perhaps fear might be in the future in respect of how things are going. But it was good. It was good fun. So thanks for coming on.
We never mentioned this could be the future.
No. You see, a lot can happen in 3 weeks, Brendan, you see. And it's kind of like, I wasn't quite expecting our world to be in this perspective just 3 weeks later from our anniversary. So, it's certainly interesting, but I think you're going to get a lot of Photoshops of all sorts of things coming up. I might add a few myself.
So we're recording just after the American elections, and of course, why we talk about the even reference in the American elections, apart from our two American friends who've no doubt voted, but it's because of this. You can't win. You cannot win. Our friend, the Seventh Doctor, Sylvester McCoy, he tweeted literally about a day or so before the election itself.
Less than 24 hours. Yes, Sunday. It was Sunday, yeah.
Sylvester wants to remind Doctor Who fans in America that Donald Trump is the absolute opposite to everything the Doctor stands for. The opposite to everything you love about the series. Please remember that when making your vote. Now, I will say one extra thing, because obviously I was talking to Matrix Lord about this the other day, that as Barunman says here, to be fair, it isn't McCoy that wrote this. The bio says all his tweets are by his manager and PA team. It's just photos he supplies. But it probably is a stupid thing to write.
I thought that. I mean, I wasn't aware of this. It does seem a bit of an odd thing to put.
I mean, it got traction. It got. I think last time I saw it was over 349,000 clicks or whatever people saw it. So I guess if the manager did that to do its job to get attention, she got attention. But it made absolutely no sense because. And I got caught up in this the moment I saw that my name kept popping up with him because I responded to this because he doesn't live in America. It's like, how would you know what we go through, what it's like with different policies we see firsthand living in this country, besides like living with Biden as the president and she's the vice president and we were with Trump before. So, like, how would you know what we're going through with the economy, with everything, to make a determination to vote for Harris? And there was also people linked with that account that was going on to say that you're not a real Whovian if you vote for Trump, and a lot of different things, like he's well informed. He kept saying he's well informed in his opinion of her.
Well, I'll include some of yours in a minute, but some of the comments coming back just showed you. I mean, to me, an actor from a different country interfering in any other election that you don't vote in, to me, is almost like you see a marital row in a pub or a restaurant and you keep out of it. You don't, it's up
I mean, the way I see it from a British perspective, I think to myself, well, is that any of his business? I know, again, it wasn't him, it was whoever did it on his behalf, but no. And what's that got to do with the election in America? I mean, there's one thing to have a perspective, but tying it in with Doctor Who and saying this is against the Doctor,
and
that's
this
just odd. It's just
and second off, I don't know if for all people, I don't take my endorsements from a fictional character.
No.
Well, last time that happened was with Ghostbusters, and look what happened with that. The female Ghostbusters endorsed, and boom, that everything fell apart with that.
Yeah, and this is what we're going to be discussing tonight. My concern is not whether Sylvester McCoy has got an opinion on life, because that's fine.
Well, welcome to it.
My
And he can express it.
My issue is using his character, his role that he played many years ago. So he's pulling Doctor Who in 2024 with a lot of political baggage and into a political battlefield and sphere. And it's a dangerous one to be in, because people, casual viewers, can see your program then as something else than just sci-fi escapism. So some of the comments here show you that this got traction, as Matrix Lord was saying. Sylvester needs to remember that Doctor Who is a fiction, and to also realize that democracy is important. And as you were saying, Michelle, not to conflate the two.
Yeah.
You've got here a couple of things. I'll just make them bigger so you can see. But Lord Brian Urso, I don't care, and I don't want to hear lectures from entertainers. Just like I don't want to hear Ted Nugent bash Obama. I don't want to hear this. You know, and this is the thing. Jack Thursby, another clueless, out-of-touch actor, attempts to use a popular character. And it's the use of the character that really has got people angry. Ben Williams, Doctor Who fans absolutely do have a tendency to deify the actors and treat them like they actually are the character. But like nobody who's played the characters on the side of Trump. Can I just point this out, though, before we move on to discussing whether we think this is a problem, really? William Shatner, good for him, he tweeted at the same time, you know, a gentle reminder as we go into Tuesday, I am not political. I cannot vote. I am a Canadian.
That's right. He's Canadian,
yeah. While I applaud those who exercise their right to vote in your country, I would kindly ask that you keep your responses to me non-political. In other words, he, you know, just like Sylvester, who's British, he's Canadian, but he's keeping out of it.
And unlike Sylvester McCoy, William Shatner actually lives in the United States. I'm not aware of any of the Doctor Who doctors living in the United States. So, I mean, I just think, you know, what used to unite us was you're a Doctor Who fan. It doesn't matter your race, your sexuality, your gender. You just love Doctor Who. You came to Doctor Who to be your comfort. Doctor Who got me through some very personal times that are very difficult. And I go forward to escape into a better world. I get away from what's going on
from reality.
From reality. That's
me too. I mean, it's
absolutely. I think William Shatner was a class act, and this one is, I don't care, go do your thing, but we're going to all just talk about Star Trek or whatever, my projects or whatever. We're just all going to do our thing. And
completely agree. Exactly. So as you say, he lives in the States already, so he's actually acting even better because he would have the influences of all the politics around him.
You know how many politicians or whatever that would clamor to get an endorsement from Captain James.
And he's like, and he's
like, no, I'm staying out of this.
No,
that's right.
My
very sensible, very respectable. I didn't know about any of this, so I think that's good that he did that.
What made me question it a bit more, because number one, it's bringing the program into it, is, well, why was it done then? So as Matrix Lord said, it could be a PR thing from the PR company behind it, and Sylvester doesn't know too much about it. He's traveling to Australia.
He's in Hong Kong right now, or
he's going to Australia. But
so he's not even in the United States when this is happening.
However, it does make me think a few things, which is, okay, then, is it celebrity endorsement, the usual virtue signaling that can go on, and we've seen plenty of it recently. But because they're making him hide behind the character of Doctor Who, then it's not got much conviction. I mean, if I was really angry about something as an actor and I really was political, then I just put my name on it. It's nothing to do with...
And associate it with something you've been in.
Yeah. But the fact that you're hiding behind a fictional character then weakens your conviction and message, I would have thought. But it also brings in the program.
They work to keep themselves away from this character until they realize this is what paid the bills.
You know, when it went trending, it said Sylvester McCoy is trending and the Doctor name is trending because of that. But this is what I don't understand is, what do you have to gain by backing a candidate in a country you don't even live in, that you don't even know her? And you have a career as an actor. You make movies in America also. You did, The Hobbit. You did many different things. Why would you want to alienate millions of your fans, that you have a box set out, coming out, Doctor Who, right? Like,
Yeah.
why would you want to label them and say, oh, you're not representing Doctor Who, you're not a real fan? And why would you want to like hurt potential income where, like, nowadays you can't say who you vote for, because if you do, you get discriminated against with jobs and stuff like that too. And I'm sure even making movies, people are very political, and they can be Republican, they can be Democrat, but to do something like that bites the hand that feeds you, because he's always looking for gigs as an actor. But how would this benefit him? It would hurt him, not benefit him, by siding with a candidate. You should have just said, oh, if he was in America, he would vote for her. You could vote for who you want. But he didn't do that. We don't really know if this was coming from him or if it was coming from his manager. I would like to think that maybe partly, I guess it would be from him, because then he would have made a statement right away.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. I was thinking if he'd had done that, or somebody had done it on his behalf, then he would say, actually, no, this was actually not my opinion. This was done by my manager, and I like to stay neutral or not get some way of defending himself. But as he's not said anything, that makes more credibility that he actually did do that.
And this is, and because he says, the Doctor would stand against people like Donald Trump, it then brings in, well, if you're going to play that game, mate, as Shempington says here, Sylvester, you need to go back and watch Remembrance of the Daleks again. The Doctor tricked Davros into destroying Skaro, which was genocide. Is this the same Doctor who manipulated and tricked Davros? Hello. British aliens straight away. Trump, like Carter, started no new wars because he's isolationist, whereas the Seventh Doctor destroyed Skaro and everyone on it. So Sylvester has a point, he says. But it just brings so much into it. Ben Williams brings in the point, if you have seen a Sylvester McCoy story, getting very mad at Sylvester McCoy for not liking Trump, what do they think this metaphor is with Richard Bryars playing the caretaker? Okay, it did get quite political with Andrew Cartmel, didn't it? The actual series with the Happiness Patrol. It's all out now.
Yeah.
Screen Wolf is interesting here. Or maybe people should actually listen to what the two candidates have to say directly and for their own opinions.
Form their own opinions,
Yeah. What's more dystopian, actual free speech or wheeling out celebrities to do people's thinking for them? And this is the thing. Celebrity endorsement, I think, is a bit passé. I don't think it works. I think it irritates people. And all these people who are saying we're all for equality and this and that. Well, equality isn't saying that your voice is more powerful and influential than somebody else's. That's taken equality away. I might quietly vote in my election in my country, but when you go on the telly and endorse like crazy, I think you're trying to say your vote is a bit bigger. And I don't like that. I'm uncomfortable with that. I'm all for equality across. So I don't like Sylvester joining Beyonce and all the gang who do this sort of thing. I'd find it uncomfortable.
I took heavy offense to this, because I started my YouTube channel in 2011 because of Doctor Who. I used to join forums and stuff like that. And I started, the majority of my content, 99% of it was Doctor Who. I have like 14,000 videos on my YouTube channel. I'm almost up to the 2000th episode of my podcast, The Real Whovians Cast. So everything Doctor Who shaped my life. I became a writer, all these different things. But to say I'm not a real fan when I promoted Doctor Who more than anything, and I'm into the business and into talking people, and I have sources with the BBC and people on set and stuff like that. Like, how could you make that statement that I'm not real? I'm not a Whovian. Like, my whole channel was Doctor Who, so I got really, really upset with the whole situation.
So the ego. I think the ego. The celebrities think that they are smarter. They know better. Now everyone is open to their opinion. Sylvester McCoy has the right to say whatever he wants to say. We also have the right here to say that we agree or disagree. And I think it speaks of ego when it says my opinion means more because I have more zeros behind my paycheck than you do.
It's funny because I've always thought in my channels and things I've done, I've always tried to be neutral, not go in the. I know we're having a focus on it this week with you, Brendan, but generally I try to be as neutral as possible, because it's always going to be that some people are going to be on your side and other people aren't. And if you just don't go too political, generally, I think that actually is a better way of doing it. I think it's just don't go there. You can have your own opinion, but don't, I mean, talk to your mates down the pub or something about it. But when it's on social media and hundreds of people, even not thousands of people, are watching you and don't know anything, you're talking to strangers about your opinions, and if people are following you and subscribing and want to see your content, some are going to think, well, look, stuff this is not what I want to. I don't understand that. I wouldn't do it.
No one's going to believe and agree 100%. And when you do that, that's wrong. And in American politics, to bring this in, it's been 40 years since we've had like a blowout of one side or the other. Most of the electorate is 40-50% one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's never been 60-40 or 60. And it's been decades. So the Americans are both thinking different directions.
But that's why you don't want a TV program, a movie, a celebrity, an outsider to wade in. I personally didn't like it in my part of the world when we had the Brexit referendum, and Barack Obama said we would be punished by America if we voted a certain way. And that didn't go down well because it was intrusion from abroad. And Sylvester McCoy has to be aware this is the same going back.
Some of the principle, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the American telling you guys how to vote Labor or Conservative in the last referendum. It's none of our business how you guys vote.
Yeah.
Well, basically, it is. I mean, it's fine to have an interest in what we're doing, but it's the same principle. Like, you just don't do that. It's another country. It's different politics. And as you say, Sylvester McCoy getting involved, that's a pretty negative thing to do.
We've got. I mean, and the truth is, yes, tonight we're talking about politics in Doctor Who, politics in Disney and BBC, and whether that's affecting Doctor Who, political Doctor Who stories. So we go in there, and of course, don't forget the Time Teaks segment when we're bringing back maybe one of our favorite political Time Lords, maybe. So anyway, Matrix Lord, this is when I saw you recently, of course, when you waded into this, and I'm putting that up there just to say you had an opinion. You're an American, and you just kind of put it your way, and fair dues. That's the whole point, isn't it? I just don't know why we had to go down this path with getting Doctor Who involved at all. I was quite enjoying watching the American election. I wasn't thinking I was suddenly going to have Doctor Who included in it.
I'm surprised that we did, actually.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
As I said earlier, nothing surprises me anymore, and I think it's just pure ego. I think David Tennant has opened up the can of worms of what a Doctor Who actor is allowed to now do or say. And
he did.
I'm the Doctor. I can say whatever I want to say.
Well, Michelle,
Davis does that too, though. Also,
I mean, you're segueing into David. David's going to be mentioned, don't worry. So here we go. We'll have our burning issue now. So that was just a kind of liven us up, and as you can see, we're all very shy at the moment. So here we go. The burning issue of the night. So the big question I'm asking now, and this is when we pull in David Tennant and Kemi Badenoch, this is when we pull in what Disney's up to, the DEI, the messaging, and in the stories. This is where we can go a lot wider, really. Or dare we say the Davros retcon? Dare we say other things? Whatever. But basically, my big question and burning issue here is what's going on here? The messaging, the retconning, the political messaging by people like Sylvester McCoy just by accident, is it damaging the brand of Doctor Who? When you get any kind of link to politics, which can get very, very toxic, and believe me, none of us tonight are going to say what we vote, what we're interested in. We're interested in Doctor Who, and I am very bothered about whether this damages Doctor Who, the brand. Because I've heard casual viewers out there laugh at Doctor Who now because Doctor Who has now been used as a political football, is now on the political battlefield. It's been kicked in there. You could
forced in there, shoved in there.
Yeah, dragged in there. And now it's getting whacked about, and everybody goes, "Oh, that represents woke. That represents political messaging. That represents the left."
I never thought that before. Yeah, until Peter Capaldi's era ended, I never really thought about that perspective, and now I think about it all the time.
Well, when Jodie Whittaker's
to do political allegory, and you could see yourself reflected in all sorts of things.
Yeah.
When Jodie Whittaker's era had, they said her universe on all the merchandise, like they were pushing an agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, her universe is also a name of a company too. So,
I know that, but it was also a mixture. Like they had to break the glass ceiling, all these different things. So it wasn't just in name only.
So, I mean, if I showed you, I did a saloon on it recently because, and I wondered whether I wanted to or not. But the fact is, David Tennant. Now, is this different? Sylvester McCoy says the Doctor would challenge Donald Trump. That's how he did it. In this case, David Tennant, who's an actor and he's got individual autonomy, of course, he's got his own opinion, that's allowed. Now, when he was presenting the LGBT awards recently, I dare say he's up there because he's a top actor. And when he was up there, he obviously criticised one of our MPs, who obviously on the trans debate is maybe on one side. And the trouble is, she is now the leader of the opposition. She's now, if it's not Keir Starmer, she might be the future prime minister. So he has actually told her to shut up. Until we wake up and Kemi Badenoch doesn't exist anymore, I don't wish ill of her. I just wish her to shut up.
I wish her ill, but then he says she doesn't want her to exist anymore.
Yeah, that was pretty hard.
What does that mean? Come on, you told us for years that words have meaning and words have power. What does "she does not exist anymore" mean?
That's not really what the Doctor would say either. So.
No, but it is different, isn't it? Because this is just the actor getting involved. I mean, Doctor Who's not exactly pulled into it. Doctor Who is just who he has been, but he's not referencing it. So in a way, I do see this in a different way. Although
yes, I do perspective.
Yeah. When she responded to him, she referenced him as the Doctor.
Yeah, well, she's referenced the Daleks as well in a speech, so that it's all got. This is what I mean. I can't hit on him on this one because he didn't reference the Doctor or dialogue or anything. The trouble is, by being a famous actor who played Doctor Who, it's been pulled in.
Well, that moment is like, even with Sylvester McCoy, where does the moment where you quit being the Doctor and what minute do you quit being your actor? Because all of these people, when they pass away, the first line in their obituary will be Doctor Who actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But his wife put him in as Doctor Who because in her post she referenced the Christmas invasion when the Doctor influenced them to overthrow Harriet Jones Prime Minister, and she took a picture with him repeating the line in the reference. So she brought it in as her husband's the Doctor, and this is from the Doctor. Like when she made her post.
It's interesting, and then there was another, and Sylvester McCoy. I mean, do you think this is his management company? Bravo, David! Don't let the Badenochs get you down. I mean, I saw it at the time. I didn't make anything of it, and I thought, but now I'm looking, going, Sylvester, my God, you are wading into politics. If it's your PR company, again, here you go. You're allowed. It's allowed. But I would have thought this subject, this topic that actually David Tennant is energized by is another one. It's a biggie. And, you just don't want Doctor Who to get pulled into it. Where I will widen this debate, though, on is this going to really be problematic for Doctor Who is we've seen how many articles and interviews this year building up to season 1. And you get to see language like go and touch grass. You are not real fans. Shut up.
Yeah.
Shut the door behind you and get out of fandom. Male presenting, never understand things. You do start to think there's some very confronting language by these people when they're interviewed that is getting fandom more toxic, more angry, more divided.
Well, especially when we had Peter Capaldi, when Peter Capaldi's daughter was upset, and understandably so. I'd be upset without seeing my dad, that he was too old and criticizing, and the daughter, and he basically told the daughter stop reading it, and also that he was a doctor for everybody, and he helped to win them over. To now, if you don't believe or like what X, Y, and Z, you're not real. If you don't like this episode, you're not a real fan. If you don't like this episode, you need to shut up. If you go and touch grass. which is now legal in most American states.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder that because Disney Plus and Disney itself would vote for Kamala Harris, like, because they've always been pushing Democrats, that maybe he sided with Kamala Harris because maybe he sees Disney Plus as a potential future for a future project or a show. As we've seen, Russell T. Davies is getting all his friends and fellow actors shows on Disney Plus. David Tennant's got a show on Disney Plus now. Russell T. Davies has got 2 shows. He's got the Doctor Who spinoff, and there's also talk of Sherlock moving to Disney Plus. So I'm wondering if he did that to cater to the Disney Plus audience as well as Sony, because Sony, puts out the Ghostbuster movies, and if you remember, they sided with Hillary Clinton, the female Ghostbusters, and Sony also has shares in Bad Wolf. So, who knows?
I respectfully, I don't think they care. Again, these are people who live very insulated lives, regardless, and so they're just going to be in an echo chamber, and they don't know anybody else who thinks differently. And if they do, they're kicked out of the circle. I just think it's just, and insulated, and you always have to be, and think of J.K. Rowling. She was the woke darling for years until she came out with a position that deviated from the accepted doctrine, and then she's getting, kicked out of that. You have to, it's not about deals; it's about ideology.
Well, if you look at this language and this discourse that seems to have crept into our Doctor Who realm, even our new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has warned David Tennant off about that language. I mean, it's just pulling us into areas and domains you don't expect. I mean, Nigel Farage of the Reform Party has brought Doctor Who up. It's now a political football. It's now being mentioned by politicians. That's never.
I'm surprised about that. I'm surprised that it's suddenly in the political kind of realm where using Doctor Who as an object for discussion and acknowledging all these issues.
The trouble is, Michael, they're using it. We've now got Doctor Who in a place where it's, I think, personally very dangerous, which is politicians are going to mention Doctor Who as a totem, as an example of either bad people, and that's disaster.
Yeah, definitely disaster.
And it's not through a really good episode that makes you think.
Yeah,
it's through just the most basic, bottom dwelling, thinking. There's no, because Doctor Who has always, you can have this debate, and I think it's a wonderful debate. Has Doctor Who always been political? Well, life is always political. You're always going to see reflections and allegories.
It's just a part of life. It has to be. It's going to have some element of that.
Yes. And it's thinking, and it's making you think.
Yeah. But it will sort of hit the political spectrum from time to time.
Yeah.
But again, it was allegory. There was an intelligence in it that you could see sometimes both sides, sometimes only one side. But it made you think about, okay, how can I relate this to my real world?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just bothered about my TV program, and yes, I've covered it before on this channel. Surprise, Malcolm Hulk, the whole lot, Happiness Patrol, Green Death, it's all there. But
Inferno.
Yeah. Sorry,
Inferno,
there's loads. Yeah. We could mention Peladon in our sleep. Let's carry on with this burning issue of whether my favorite program's getting damaged by all this froth and nonsense and fury. I'm interested because where we are at the moment, with the Stonewall getting into all the agencies in our country anyway and influencing them from the NHS and everything. You've got Disney with their DEI agenda, the BBC with their DEI agenda. So it just makes me wonder how far these things will ultimately affect Doctor Who. I see quotes from, the Star Wars New Jedi Order director saying she will ignore fan criticism. Oh, I've heard that before. I'm just drowning out those voices until I'm done. I suppose they can touch grass too. Now, I wanted to show you this and see what you think. We are fresh from the American election. And we had the concession speech from Kamala Harris. And she said, there's an adage, a historian once called the law of history. true of every society across the ages. The adage is, only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. I know many people feel like we are entering a dark time, but for the benefit of us all, I hope that is not the case. But here's the thing, America. If it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant, brilliant billion of stars. Okay. I'm making no comment on the American election and that. But when I heard that, do you know what? I could hear Russell T. Davies. And this is when I started to get concerned, because I'm an English teacher. I listen to the same lexical process. And he has talked about dark times and us needing joy.
Yes.
And this is when I think, where are we going with season 2? Where are we going with stories to do with this program? There's your evidence. I will always provide evidence. But nonetheless, as the world darkens, and I do think the world is darkening around queer rights, there is a joy and a celebration, and there's a community. And he goes on. I am beginning to worry about where we are in society. And there is a hero out there cutting his way through the universe. And of course, that's why we've got our Shooty Gatwa doctor. So you can see what I heard. And then he moves on a little bit later in the same article. We live in heavy times. I want people of all ages to turn from the news and to turn from whatever aggression there is online and to come to a nice, safe space. Now, that is quite worthy in itself, except surely when politics comes into a program, whether it's gender ideology, identity politics, the stuff that people talk about nowadays, it ages the program. And it soils it in a way that I don't think helps its longevity later on. But I do find it fascinating that I think Kamala Harris and RTD have the same scriptwriter or the same friend, because these dark times and needing joy and dark times needing a joyful character. I found that fascinating. Anybody else think I'm onto something?
I find it in her speech like she's encouraging people to revolt against Donald Trump, to have a voice of a billion stars like shining up the sky. Look, it's just a thing. No matter who you vote for, Doctor Who cannot be. You can't have the actors coming out representative a candidate, because you alienate your audience. You could be, it doesn't matter who, because at the end of the day, we're all Whovians. It doesn't matter what we ate for breakfast. It doesn't matter, what our preference is or who we vote for. We're Whovians at the end of the day. And that should not be questioned. We should not be judged or told, hey, you're an old Whovian. I don't need you anymore. We got new Whovians now. Like, I think that's happening too in Doctor Who, where they're not even talking about the old fans anymore. They're trying to make it for a new audience, but not necessarily for us.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous, because it's us that have kept it going. And the younger generation don't tend to watch so much TV. They tend to just look at YouTube. And you look at the UK. I mean, how many times we talked about this, Brendan, about the ratings for season 1 of the New Who, and how bad it's been. Because us old classic fans, we've been given the mid finger, and like, sorry, mate, we're not doing this for you. It doesn't matter that you used to watch it for like 35 years or something. We want it new, we want it different, and we want to make it completely unrecognizable from the show that you love.
And that's where when we heard quotes from, say, Jinx Monsoon saying "shut the door behind you," or Gatwa's version was "go and touch grass," or RTD's version in his interviews was, real Doctor Who fans will think this, because there's been inclusion and diversity in Doctor Who all the way from the beginning. It's got a different term now. And Doctor Who fans know that. And so we've been given, but the trouble is, it sounds like there's a line going on. The dark times bringing joy. To me, I'm thinking, it sounds as though there's an agenda, and I've never bought into this. Never. I'm not one of those people. But when I heard that speech, and I thought, do you know what? A different country, a showrunner for Doctor Who, it's a similar vibe. This sounds as though everybody's selling us a similar message. And then you think, oh my God, what will be in the scripts? That's when I start to worry.
You and I were talking about how we were worried about season 2 because season 1 and 2 were done at the same time. So there wouldn't really be a difference between season 2 to season 1, like his original series 1 and series 2 with Chris Eccleston and David Tennant. So season 1 and 2 will basically be the same. 3 would be different.
Yeah.
And what I want to talk about for a moment is like the director who says that she doesn't want to listen to criticism. And you know what? And I get part of that as a writer. Sometimes criticism can be pretty cutting. I mean, one time one of my reviews for one of my books was that my book was as scary as cold rice pudding, and the cold pudding was scarier. But there's also times where constructive criticism can be very helpful.
Yeah.
It makes you a better writer, and it makes you a better product. So one hand I get, yes, you don't want to listen to some of the criticism because some of it, it's out there, it's hurtful, it's ironic. There's always going to be bigots. There's always going to be sexist. There's always going to be somebody that's just the village idiot. But at the same time, it could be like, you know what, X, Y, and Z is good, but if you tied it to here to there, it's actually going to make for a much more better product. And that's where it's concerning that season 1 and season 2 were filmed together. Because it couldn't be like, okay, now this part we nailed it. Maybe we shouldn't make him so emotional, or maybe
the mistake. I think the mistake is, as you said, that basically they should have had season 1, got it out there, got the reactions of the audience and the reviewers, and then they could have shaped season 2. They didn't. They recorded both seasons, and so season 2, of course, will not have any influence from the bad negativity of season 1. It'll be exactly the same. If anything,
because that's an area where criticism could help, and we've seen this in other franchises.
But is this why? What do you reckon? Is this why? Because we were talking about this the other day, weren't we, Matrix Lord? That Russell T Davies, in a way, could be the decoy. He's the writer, of course, and he's the showrunner. But is he actually saying, blame me, attack me as a deflection? Because if they've done 2 seasons together for other reasons, not because of RTD's stipulation, then you could argue, just tell me off, just blame me, because he doesn't need the criticism to go anywhere else, because there's nothing they can do. In a way, Michelle, they can't respond because they had to make them in these 2 filming blocks. So in a way, is RTD being honest?
Thinks he's perfect. He said that. He thinks he's perfect. And then you're just like him, you're the one that's to blame.
But he also lies. Like Moffat had said back in the day when Moffat was a showrunner, he came out and said, me and Russell T Davies constantly lie about the show to protect the show. And they put that in the episodes that the Doctor and River lies as the joke. But we also seen Russell flat out lie because he didn't want to answer questions about what's happening with the 14th Doctor. And he says, I'm just going to say that he drowned in Venice and whatever. But when we saw the episode of, the finale, the first part, the Doctor asked Rose Noble, how is your uncle? And she said, fine. So the 14th Doctor didn't drown. He just didn't want to answer questions. And he just said that.
So what is your theory? Since you've mentioned our lovely 14th Doctor, who is not slagging off Kemi Badenoch, he's the 14th Doctor. Do you think the bi-generation is part 1 of a 2-part deal that we're going to revisit that? Or do you think that was just a one-off?
I think that it's going to be a shocker because I think the way I envision it, Shudi's doctor said that he has all the memories of what's to come, I guess, for the 14th Doctor, because he gets better, so he appears, which really makes no sense. But I have a feeling that we're going to see David Tennant again as the 14th Doctor. I feel that they're going to remerge because I have a feeling that there's going to be a situation where the Doctor's going to get hurt, Shudi's doctor, and he's going to find out that he doesn't have any regenerations at all, and maybe they're all with the 14th Doctor,
I like that idea.
How does that really work?
Yeah,
I love that. That'd be really clever, actually.
But also too, that you can never really be split. Like the same entity would have to remerge. Like we've seen a lot of stuff over the years, even in Star Trek when Kirk was split into 2, or even Spider-Man was split into 2, and they had to remerge at some point in time. I do feel that that's the same thing with the regeneration energy. And even Shudi's doctor says to his companion, Ruby. She's like, why are you running? You never run. And he said, this is something he can't face. It literally broke him in half, split him in two. Like he's like a half doctor. Now, is that really true? Is he really a half doctor? Is what has me questioning. And I was always worried about that too, because you want Shooty to stand on his own. But now is Shooty Gatwa's doctor being judged as a half doctor because he's getting defeated lately? Not only is he getting defeated a lot, but he's emotionally.
He cries too much.
Yeah, it's just he's like an emotional wreck where Mel's like, get yourself together. We got to get into this. You got to wake up. So like, I'm wondering if they do remerge and we have, let's say, a third season, would it be a different 15th Doctor or would it be the same?
Oh, is that your theory that when he rejoins, he's still the 15th Doctor? He's not like he regenerates.
Oh, and his personality's changed because he's got the Tennant.
No, I think what's going to happen is I feel that I would like to think that the finale of season 2 has to do with David Tennant, and they just remerge, because from what I understand, Shooty's last is going to be the Christmas special 2026 after season 3, so that's a whole different storyline, I think. But I would like to think that, because the thing is too, I know that they kept David Tennant around as a backup plan in case Shooty didn't work. Then they could just go right back to Donna Noble and doing specials or doing, because they're contractually obligated, him and Catherine Tate. So you get the impression like when Russell says, "Oh, they're done, they're gone." Well, yeah, they already filmed season 2, so you don't know if David Tennant was in season 2 when he says David Tennant's not going to be doing Doctor Who anymore. He could have already filmed his final scene already. So I just think that it's like definitely going to happen that David Tennant.
And cynically, if the season 2 finale is the last, or whatever last Christmas special is the last, and season 3 isn't picked up, that could also be an ending for the series period. So it's not left hanging out there.
Well, I gotta say, from what I've heard from my insider sources, that the season 3 is going to happen no matter what, whether it's on Disney Plus or not, because they have to have him regenerate, because usually Doctors are 3 seasons, but they're going to wait. I was talking to you before about that they're going to withhold the Christmas special and they're going to film it late because they don't want to leak the spoilers for who the new Doctor is and what the villain is for the Christmas special of 2026. Yeah. So, but again, I feel that what excites me about season 3 to season 2 is the fact that it is new because it's not connected. Season 1 and 2 were done together. Season 3, he would have seen everybody's responses to what they liked and didn't like. And even if he feels he's perfect, he would change things based on regardless.
Would he? Or would he just... Yeah, but he might just ignore it.
He would put on an act like, but he would change things, I feel.
We did
I hope you're right.
I mean, there was the notes from Disney Plus on the Christmas special that they had the Doctor not in it early enough, and so that's where the Snowman was the last edition.
Yeah. Well, do we think he would adapt? Right. Okay. It's quite complex how it's been filmed, and RTD does adapt, and RTD is a good writer. Those are definites. So, is this possible that something that got the fans so angry, maybe because of the DEI, the messaging, the tropes that are problematic, that we went down this Davros road that the children need a year ago? I've got a quote there from the book, which actually refers to Davros's life support system. But as we know, that's not how it was discussed in Unleashed on the program. And as you know, I'll make it bigger. What RTD said to us at the time, and I do grant what Matrix Lord said, that they can lie deliberately just to give us a red herring. He said we've moved on, and there's a problem with the Davros of old.
I know, but come on.
You just changed the timeline, because the thing is, it was always revealed that through his accident where he couldn't walk anymore, and then he was put into the apparatus, the rage, the anger the pure hatred for the race that did it to him, gave birth to the Daleks. He created that, used that anger and channeled that anger to create the Daleks. He never created the Daleks when he was normal. So we have
But this episode, I mean, this short we had from the was it Children Need?
But
I assume this was a prequel before the accident.
Yeah,
but isn't this before the accident? He's still going to have the accident, though, isn't he?
Well, his excuse is that he didn't want to portray disabled people as evil. There had been a long time trope of using disabled people as evil.
That's ridiculous.
But again, that was his excuse for it. Again, I disagree with that, but I think you can be whatever, regardless of the mobility type, and it takes away from complexity of character. And this wasn't a debate that we didn't need. And when it came out, that was a debate that we didn't need, because as fans, we should have been getting excited for the 60th anniversary special.
This is when I don't understand, and I'm trying to understand what Matrix Lord's speculation is, because if you think about it, yes, season 1 and 2 are written and filmed, and it's only season 3 when we might see some adaptation. I get that. He might have seen feedback. He might have seen things that just need tweaking. He might have had notes from Disney and or the BBC, right? But this was landed way earlier, and Davros was not planned to be in season 1. I think, I from my guesses, I don't think he's in season 2. So there was no need. There was no need to put your flag in the sand so early on an issue that would just get people riled. And even if we're saying, is this a prequel? Is this this? All his discussion about tropes and Davros will never be like this again. I just don't know why we went there. And I'm trying to think, even creatively, if this is a red herring, why would he do it?
See, the thing is, he didn't even need to do this, because the thing is, if you watch Doctor Who, and if you remember, and especially with the regeneration energy, there's so many hours of cycle with the regeneration energy. The regeneration energy is going to cure and heal and regenerate the body completely. So it's not going to, when he gave the regeneration energy to Davros is going to wind up getting out of the apparatus, going to be able to walk, going to be able to see. The hours ahead is going to completely regenerate him. And we could have had a Davros that was completely healed from the regeneration energy from that episode with Peter Capaldi afterwards. But to do this goes against Genesis of the Daleks, because the Daleks were created and invented and completed when he was in that apparatus.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a paradox.
Good point. That's a good point.
But also, David Tennant's doctor had basically just told the audience, I just altered the past or whatever, or something, the canon. So you could say that now, because the Daleks and everything was from the future, that it's altered. And Davros is altered.
Well, it also speaks to a creator and a current handler of a show that may not have respect for the history of the series, and is basically saying that there are parts of the old series that are problematic, and so they have to be erased.
Yeah,
I don't need to do that.
I have a problem with this, and I feel that even people in wheelchairs that I know that were fans of Davros were against this too.
Very upset over this Scottish Davros. Yeah. Many of them were deep, and they have a right, and even more so of a right, to come out and how they view the Davros character. Because that's
why do they keep doing this on Doctor Who? Why do they keep guessing people's reactions based on sexuality or disability or race or anything? They always kind of say, well, okay, I'm the writer. I think that these people are going to be offended. I'm going to be kind of like out for them, supporting them. I'm going to give the message, and I'm going to. Don't do that. Don't expect people.
Especially when they're always telling us to stop and listen and
they don't need to do that.
But the reverse version,
to speak for somebody else.
The reverse version of that is, while he doesn't want anybody in a wheelchair to take offense at the Davros character, so therefore he retcons it. So you take that logic. He then writes Dot and Bubble where he says, I wrote it to see whether you lot noticed it was only white characters until the end. In other words, he was trying to challenge us and confront us. And you think, are you trying to offend? Because you offended me by saying that. By God, I was just trying to watch some blooming entertainment on TV.
Totally,
I didn't know I was doing a test. So I was furious at that. And that offended me. But I don't think he cared about that. So whose offense is important here?
Or then you put the mobility ramp on the TARDIS, but has the character who is in a wheelchair never actually get on the TARDIS.
On the actual TARDIS,
and then she disappears when we have another unit episode, and she's off. Like, and I get it, probably the actor had other commitments elsewhere, but at the same time, she hasn't had her TARDIS ride yet.
And also, the biggest insult is you have Donna Noble and her daughter educating the Doctor about pronouns, and you wouldn't understand because you're a male-dominated Time Lord. And like, are you kidding me? Like, it's just,
she was a female, like not that long.
Right. And what did Chris Chibnall do? He changed his scripts based on some fans wanting the Doctor and Yaz to have a romance. That Yaz was always heterosexual because she had a romance with Ryan and they were in love with each other in school, and she was never bisexual or anything, and they completely changed it based on fans.
Then they fan baited them. They fan baited them to the very end.
But this is, I mean, you've brought this up. This is what I mean. When I'm talking about politics damaging Doctor Who, I'm still under that umbrella theme, because in so many different ways, you've got Sylvester McCoy wading into the big US election, which was, we all thought it was 50-50, so it was going to be a tight one. We thought it might end up in the courts for months.
I thought it would be tighter, actually. I thought it would be tighter.
You've got Sylvester McCoy, our Seventh Doctor, wading in there. You've got David Tennant using his status as one of the top famous actors in the country to wade into British politics here. You then have gender politics coming into this, that you've then got this idea that we need to stamp on every trope and every stereotype and stuff like that. So here, I mean, there's 2 points, and I'll ask you a question. The bi-generation that we've just seen a snip of there, the bi-generation I find problematic because it's the black actor in his undies who's objectified. It's the white actor isn't. So I don't understand how that's progressive. Then here you get this dig at men. How is this progressive? How is this equal? How is this nice? And I don't understand what we're trying to do. Is somebody saying this is just a joke? It's called Doctor Who humor. It's just a little dig.
That was no joke. That was not a joke.
And that episode, that's where, I mean, I have another friend who loved the episode. And I enjoyed it when it came out. But that line there is like, okay, you got me. I lost you.
Me too.
You. That was ridiculous.
I love the episode, but that ruined that.
And I don't mind the problem with the Rose character. I think she needs to be served better. I think she has the potential to be an interesting character. I'm not very happy with how she's been portrayed.
Well, what has she done with the Sutek episode? She was on an iPad while this thing is screaming and attacking, and
that's unfair.
Nothing.
Use of her. And that's unfair for use of her, and actually, as an actor and as a character.
And it's not progressive that, okay, you pick a trans actor, like since we've done it, we've all joked about her being on her iPad playing Candy Crush or whatever. And then, while the world is facing Armageddon, but actually her job at UNIT, let's be honest, was just doing shoplifting in Catford. I mean, she wasn't even given a great role. She could have been looking after the archive. No.
But no disrespect, though. Even the first thing when that happens would have been her reaction is, I need to find my uncle, meaning the Doctor. Even though, no disrespect to Shooty, but she recognizes her uncle as the Doctor, even though he came after. But she would go to contact him. And the biggest thing would be, well, where the hell was he and Donna Noble when this was going on? Because obviously they were outside of time itself. If they, there was no remorse about, oh my God, my mom's in jeopardy. She was completely confident and relaxed when she was on her iPad.
She should have been pulling her iPad. Uncle, we need your help now. What do you mean you're in such and such a place?
Right.
His Wi-Fi must have gone down.
They could have done that. What do you mean you're on access to? Oh, brother!
It looked as though Donna's got a big garden, and the Wi-Fi connection may have gone, and so
sometimes you get,
you don't always check your iPhone when you're weeding at the very back. Or he might have gone, is it mole hunting with
Wasn't
Bernard?
that the doctor's house though, and not Donna's house? Because then he buy a house with all the money that Kate Stewart saved for him.
I tell you what, we could make him you remember that 70s sitcom Doctor in the House? We could have Doctor in Rosa's house.
Doctor, yeah. When she tries to contact him and go, Mom, what do you mean you're an X, Y, and Z? Oh, brother, you know.
Yeah, we're in E-Space. Sorry, what the hell is E-Space now?
I mean, because Rose used to call her mom when she was in the universe. That's Doctor Who humor. Go, what do you mean you're on Skyro?
Yeah. Well, since the Davros retcon, maybe the politics feeding in, maybe RTD is censoring himself because he's working with Disney now. We don't know, but it just seems problematic. But since he's so bothered about that trope, I just wanted to check with you whether you thought this trope is okay, though. And it's here. It's Chris Noth in Arachnids in the UK, who everybody who watched Doctor Who knew it was a Trumpian character, and it was deliberately a dig at least at arch capitalists. Now, is that trope acceptable to take a dig at American billionaires?
That's a good question. Yeah.
You know, which tropes are acceptable to change and get rid of, and which ones do we just dig into forevermore?
Well, I mean, with obviously we've got two Americans on today's show. I mean, how do you feel about a British show showing a character like a sort of capitalist like Trump? Are you offended, or do you mind it?
I kind of was when I'm sorry, yeah.
It's their right to make a statement. I can't be saying I believe in free speech, but only my free speech. They have the right to parody whoever they want to. And again, there's parts of capitalism, any political system, that needs to be parodied. That's just how things work.
Okay.
I kind of was offended, and I kind of felt the digs. Like, we always seen digs with the way they treated the American presidents, with Howard Saxon just killing the president in 5 seconds, or the doctor saying to an alien that only Great Britain is great. Nobody else. Like, so I don't know. I could have did without it. I saw that as a dig, and I know there's digs like that too, but they're free to do what they do. I don't like the portrayal when they do stuff like with American history and they change things like Thomas Edison. I felt it was totally wrong, the portrayal, and Bruce and Nicholas Tesla and stuff like that. But they're free to do what they want to do.
It's just that right. I know I've compared the Donald Trump, and I think we all saw there was a link there going on. And we'll look at some other American tropes possibly later. But it's a dig at capitalism as well, isn't it? And that's the problem, I think, that Doctor Who... I mean, what's the version we go for? You can't have somebody who's... I mean, I don't know. Are we having a dig at Elon Musk? Are we having a dig at everybody who's got money? What is the dig?
If I could just add to this, it's funny because before Donald Trump ran for office the first time, he was friends with every single person. He was friends with the Clintons. He was friends with Whoopi. He was friends with everybody. Everybody thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread and loved him. The moment he ran, he became the greatest villain known to man. And it's sad because you can see even Oprah and everybody loving him and talking how great he is and stuff like that. Oh, maybe we should run for office. Maybe you should. When he actually did, he became the villain.
Yeah. Exactamon. And so, since we've just mentioned, great political stories in Doctor Who, come and listen to our keeper of the Matrix, Michael, and see what he's got for us there. One of the go-to stories when we talk about politics and political narratives in Doctor Who is Colony in Space from 1971. Obviously, our keeper of the Matrix, Michael. Colony in Space, a classic political narrative in Doctor Who?
Yes, well, as you pointed out on past streams, Brendan, the writer, Malcolm Hulke, was a communist. And his story, Colony in Space, was meant to be a social commentary on colonialism and the dangers of colonialism. And if you see how the two different groups are portrayed in Colony in Space, you can see that, the evil mining company and the poor oppressed, colonists.
Yeah, it's a classic. Well, it's to me, it always has that classic anti-colonial feel to it, which is, the message is outright British Empire naughty boys, which I always
Yeah.
find a bit funny when we later had the Dot and Bubble story, where of course he was going to help those white supremacists to go and colonize the planet. But there's irony for you, Keeper of the Matrix. So when it comes to this story, where do you think Malcolm Hulke was leading us to feel sympathy?
I think it was very much designed for us to feel more sympathy towards the colonists as an oppressed class, like using a communism as an example, the proletariat, being oppressed by the ruling class, or the evil capitalists, who were the mining company, who wanted all the resources of the planet themselves, and felt that the workers were just disposable. And so he very much was trying to get across the point that, yes, even though, like setting up on other planets, maybe, sort of, colonialism and not very good from a, social and political point of view, that the evil of capitalism, was far worse than anything that the colonists were doing.
You see, I think Doctor Who has an interesting kind of association with colonization. I don't think it's as anti in a way, because in Ark in Space, he refers to, they're colonizing planets now, the human, they're indomitable. He seemed to have respect for these colonist humans. So I found it funny, but as you point out, in Colony in Space, gosh, in Destiny of the Daleks, in many Dalek stories, in Dalek Invasion of Earth, you always see exploitation of the miners, Peladon. Doctor Who tends to look at the exploitation of the working class. That's what they tend to look at, isn't it?
Yes, and very much, and not just the population either, Brendan. They also tend to highlight how, a planet's resources being stripped bare, for the greed, or because, Earth or whatever planet happens to need those materials to expand its empire. So it's very much a commentary on, well, we have the right, we've settled this planet, or we've conquered it, so we have the right to lay it bare, which is very much present on this story in Colony in Space.
And again, and our show tonight is littered with this, especially when we look at the American election and how Donald Trump has been depicted, and arch capitalists are depicted, because it seems to me in all these plots that the Doctor Who writers tend to go on the line that capitalism writ large is bad, is exploitative, needs pushing back on. I'm struggling to think of stories where capitalism in Doctor Who looks okay.
Yeah, it tends to be really extreme views who does. Like there's never the middle ground where you see, or I can't from my memory remember a story where, capitalism has been painted as a good thing and it's benefiting the population. It's always been, the population is being taken advantage of, or they're being ripped off.
Yeah, they want
some way.
Yeah, they want the wealth for themselves. Van Staten in Dalek, he's a collector, that sort of thing. Well, so there you go. Us Doctor Who fans, we know Colony in Space well. We know the target book. It's a good Malcolm Hulke. And yeah, that's our first contribution from the Matrix archives. Thanks to the Keeper. Well, here we go. It's a politics special. So I've selected for you some treasures from the Doctor Who past. So if I just go through them very quickly and see what our panel thinks of these. I'm trying to cover nearly all the eras, really. You've got the Time Meddler way back. I mean, he was a roving, naughty criminal, so to speak, Time Lord. You've got the Division above him. Now, if you want to go right up to date with the Flux and that, the Division. I mean, is there some great storyline there that we could dig over? You've got Tectone behind. the great child abuser of Doctor Who, right behind there. So you've got the Time Meddler, the Division, Tecton, Drax from the Armageddon Factor. Because remember, he was a Time Lord, and that, you know, I don't know, there might be some storyline there you might be intrigued by. You've got Razalon himself, you've got Baruza, who went mad, and you've got Omega. So there's your choices there. Now, story-wise, because I have to say, I think the Master needs resting. I think, you know, I think there's certain characters, please don't bring back for a while. I think when you repeat things too much, they are devalued. So I've picked these. Which ones do you think could still make a really rich storyline for Doctor Who?
I think Omega.
Omega.
Flat out.
Yeah, that's the first one that I thought Omega's definitely needs to come back. Only featured twice in the classic series, the 3 Doctors and that fifth.
The fifth Doctor's
That's it, isn't it, for Omega?
Yeah. You got the impression that Moffat was going to bring him back, like because he thought Matt Smith was going to stay. There was the voice in the TARDIS. Was Omega behind Madame Kavarian, but never manifested itself. But Omega, because when the Daleks went to war with the Time Lords, you learned that the regeneration energy count was all political, because they made a statement that Time Lords would be dying over and over and over again endlessly to battle the Daleks, so that they lifted the sanctions of the regeneration limits. And they also had Rassilon, the 5 Doctors, in his essence connected to his carcass. So they basically gave him new regeneration energy in cycles and stuff like that too. So you would think that because of the war with the Daleks, they already got Omega back as well. So I would be expected to see Omega return.
I think, again, it'd be a good use of the Time Lords, of course, and also the Time Lords. Yeah, and they are a political allegory for the British upper class that was ruling post-war Britain. That's like another great use of a political allegory is the Time Lords and their corruption. And I would love to see Omega come back. I also think the Time Meddler would be a lot more better in some of the historical stories. He should have come back in Rosa. He should have been one that's causing problems, not some racist alien. The Time Meddler should have gone in there. Just what does he do? He meddles in time. He don't care. He's going to go into a key moment in history and just mess it up for giggles.
I mean, for all we know, Rassilon is Miss Flood. Because Rassilon was the only one that did the narration at the end of the time to the human race.
Yeah.
He was the voiceover, and he could be Miss Flood, that something could have went wrong with the gods messing with his memories on and off, and he could be Miss Flood could be Rassilon.
Now, so far, none of you are tiptoeing towards that Division or Tecton. I mean, the Division, we had the CIA. I mean, I was nearly laughing when Michelle was talking about the British upper class, which I get.
Yeah.
It was funny that Robert Holmes talked about the Celestial Intervention Agency, the CIA, taking the mick out of America in a way. But instead of the CIA, are we more into the Division, or do you want the CIA back, or do we forget both of them?
I hate the Division, but I feel that you and I talked about this off air about how Russell T Davies, besides bringing Moffat back, wanted Chibnall back to finish the Timeless Child storyline, especially with the Division and everything else. And he was busy doing plays and stuff. But we've heard that Joe Martin is going to be possibly returning into Doctor Who, and that would be directly connected with the Division. So if you're going to explain away the Division, I guess, you could bring them back, but I really don't care for. I never really saw Tecton as anything. I feel that maybe she was like a Time Lord with dementia, and all that stuff was nonsense about the Timeless Child, and she was never that big like Rassilon and Omega, and that she just wanted to be. Maybe she did her own thing and kind of tricked the Master into joining in and telling him all about it to trick the Doctor. But if you're gonna explain away the Division and then have it no more, then bring them back.
And do you think we're Baruza'd out?
Yeah, he's stuck in 5 Doctors, isn't he now?
He's still in the tomb, isn't he?
He's stuck in. He's
with his eyes going like that. His left and right. His eyes,
Unless they freed him in the Time War, just like they did Rassilon.
Yeah. Is nobody tempted? I mean, I'm saying I'm going against my own arguments sometimes just to test you out, which is I know sometimes if you've had a good idea in Doctor Who and it's been executed well, don't go back. Just leave it. So in the Five Doctors, we had, the Dark Scrolls and we had the Death Zone. And of course, that's where Baruza is at the moment, the Death Zone. Does nobody fancy going back to the Death Zone?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that. I don't see why not. It's only featured in one episode. I think it's definitely strong enough to be brought back in some capacity, even for one story. I mean, obviously, I don't know how they could use it, but potentially, I don't mind seeing it one more time, maybe.
I would have liked to see the Valyard return, but
yeah. I don't know, because it just the Five Doctors is such a classic episode, and I'm really concerned anytime they try to Mickey with anything from the classic era. I think it's like sometimes a one and done idea, and also the portrayal of Barusa was so abhorrent because Barusa had been one of the Doctor's few allies and friends on Gallifrey, and to have him betray the Doctor in such a way and get such a very good comeuppance, I think we'll just leave it that he's still stuck as a sarcophagus. My eyes going.
Has Doctor Who as a long running series destroyed the whole concept of the Time Lords? I mean, I don't know if I do want to even see any of them. I don't know if I want to see Time Lord Society, because they've now turned warlike. They're corrupt. They've been corrupt for quite a few decades now. I don't know if I want to pitch back. I mean, he had them initially. The story was they were so boring and administrative that the Doctor wanted to leave.
Yeah.
Then we get the fact that they're all very corrupt. And now we add on top of that the war with the Daleks,
Don't forget that even though they said the Master killed everybody in Gallifrey, which we don't even know if that's our Gallifrey or another, universe, because the Master could have fell into black hole since the Cybermen episode into another universe, and then Tech Dayon tricked him. But that could be a possibility. But it's just basically. What am I trying to say? I just blew off my train of thought.
You're in a time, Eddie. That's me.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think personally, Rusty Davis is very against the Time Lords coming back in any capacity. And from what upset where Moffat brought back the Time Lords, and then they got killed off again. I think that's right. Is that correct, Brendan? I think that's what happened. I know that.
I think I remembered. So yeah, Peter Capaldi banished Rassilon and the High Council from Gallifrey, and then Master destroyed Gallifrey, but Rassilon and the High Council were not on Gallifrey when it was destroyed. So there's a whole bunch of Time Lords out there, even though the Doctor said that there isn't, because the Doctor's always wrong anyway when it comes to that. And
does everybody suspect, since I'm talking about politics and all the rest of it in Doctor Who and the politics behind the scenes, did Stephen Moffat have in Hellbent a gender fluid Time Lord because of DEI and policies in the BBC and elsewhere? Or was it because he was being naughty and cheeky? Or was it just a great narrative? Because to me, unfortunately, by making the Time Lords gender fluid, even though before they were called Time Lady and Time Lord, and when Romana seemed to go through a whole list of choices in Destiny of the Daleks, she seemed to just pick female images. And of course, when the Patrick Troughton Doctor was about to regenerate in a forced regeneration, the Time Lords only offered him males. Yeah. So we have changed canon there. And so
the one thing that changed canon was Neil Gaiman was the one that introduced the Corsair that Matt Smith said was the first Time Lord to change sex and regeneration. And then after the Doctor's Wife episode, then Moffat kept talking about how he did the thing with the guy on becoming a woman, the general, and they just said that it was a regular thing with the Time Lord Society that they could switch sex and regeneration.
I became a new friend. I mean, a new fan. Oh, a new friend also. A new fan in 2014, and I saw writing on the wall then that after Capaldi, the next Doctor was going to be a female. I just saw it as a progression, because we had the Sarah Jane episode where I think the Doctor was death, and where the one of the kids was asking the Doctor, can you be in any gender? Yes. Can you be any color? Yes. Does regeneration hurt? Yes. So I saw then they were trying to pave the way that there was going to be a female Doctor.
Well, even when Matt Smith first came into being, he was scared that he became a woman when he went from David Tennant to Matt Smith. He's like, I'm a girl. No,
I'm a girl.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I saw the writing on the wall then that was coming. So that's when Jodie Whittaker was announced. That was not the shock. Now, did I agree with it? Not necessarily. No, I didn't. But I also saw that it was a progression that it was going to come.
It's just It's just when you see, for example, in Rogue, when they had the Chulda and it was all about cosplay, you can see how they're trying to touch on certain kind of things going on out there, culturally speaking. We've mentioned the male-female presenting Time Lord dialogue, but when it comes to this, my concern is, I've lost my thread as well. Matrix Lord, it's infecting me. It's a space plague. It's a space plague. No, it's about the trans issue, which is, when you say the Time Lords can be gender fluid, which was never the case before, and it looks so easy to do. I'm sat there as a little young teenager, a bit confused about life, and this is one of my top shows that has an influence on me. As you said, Michelle, it's a crucial show to some of us, and you're watching that you can go from female to male Time Lord just like that. It's dead easy. And then you've got cosplay stuff on top. They're making it look as though you can swap gender quite easily, and I just wonder whether that's a lovely idea to really sell a trans message. I'm just wondering.
Well, it goes beyond that too, because if you remember the lockdown episodes, if you watched it, Russell T Davies had introduced that the Doctor becomes an animal in the future, which that's a whole new topic right there. If he becomes like a lion type of Beauty and the Beast creature or something.
It's just I know. I just find it looks as though, I think, one example, I can't make a big thing of it, but when you just add up all the examples, all the issues, you think, no, we are moving deliberately, doing something, surely.
It was supposed to be a rarity in timeless society that happened. It happened once, and then all of a sudden it happened unexpectedly because they were all in shock that the general became a woman. So it was implied that it wasn't a regular occurrence. And then later on, it's like, oh, Capaldi's making it like it's a regular thing. So it just gets weirder and weirder with Timeless Society, how 1 minute it's rare, then it's a little bit, then it's a lot. So I don't, but you get the impression that they can't control it either, like the Doctor can.
Yeah, and now we've been tiptoeing into, is it policies behind the BBC and Disney that are maybe affecting some characterization and some narrative? And I just wondered, because in a recent stream, I'm nothing unusual. I think a lot of people did discuss this as well, but I did say on my stream, I did think that maybe Disney are trying to get season 3, because when Seeds of Doom and Terror of the Zygons was taken off BBC iPlayer, I wondered if it wasn't just an annual kind of, let's just up our negotiation, that it's part of something bigger.
Yeah, you and I talked about this. Basically, Disney Plus got subscribers when Doctor Who aired, and then when Doctor Who was off, those fans of Doctor Who just dumped Disney Plus. So Disney Plus wants the wide library to hold on to the Whovians, rather than them unsubscribed. So this is what the whole purpose of the Whoniverse is. But the Whoniverse isn't ready yet, because the Whoniverse is its first spin-off, The War Between the Land and the Sea. They're filming it now, and they have 2 other plans and 2 other spin-offs. But the whole goal was to keep the subscribers on Disney Plus by giving them the whole library of Doctor Who.
I was shocked when Disney got it last year, and it was only going to be for the newer series. I thought they were with the universe, and even and they're showing the older characters and the logo, I thought they were going to get the whole library. Yeah. And that would have been, I thought, on Disney, on a business standpoint, and smart to get the whole catalog of classic and new, because then you get a whole fan base, and then also you get people going back to look at the older stuff.
So how come they haven't done that? Because that seems to be a very logical step. If they,
it's probably going to happen because there's a reason why they're getting removed from, iPlayer.
Yeah, because iPlayer is losing 1 or 2 stories, 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah,
but it would make sense that Disney Plus has money. They want to make more money with Doctor Who, and they want the whole catalog.
That's what I thought.
When Disney got Doctor Who, I was excited going, okay, we have the animators. We can finish the animation of the incomplete stories. I was really like, oh my goodness, we're going to get the whole catalog all one place, so you can go back and watch the whole history of the show. We can get the animation to film and the voice actors to finish the incomplete episodes.
And if I could just add something, a lot of people are under the notion that they're waiting by the phone for Disney Plus to say, okay, go ahead. And then people think that you can just snap your fingers, and no, everything is in pre-production and everything is in prep, and they will approve Doctor Who season 3, and they will make plans and, rent this street to film on and pay for this costume and pay for this makeup artist and all that way before we know about it. So in other words, the fact that Shooty was saying that he's coming back to film season 3, but they edited it from Graham Norton, means that they told him when he had to be back. He was given time to go film those 2 movies, the music video, the play, but in February, he has to be back to film Doctor Who. They're going to be filming in January. So he knew as a fact that they're filming in February. He 100% believed it. And it wasn't that they just told him. That was factual, but he's not the one to make that announcement. Russell T. Davies has to make that announcement on behalf of Disney Plus because Russell T. Davies is the showrunner, and that's why they wanted them to edit it out. But to the public, with all these people with the hate videos and stuff like that, it needs to be canceled. Disney is already battling, Star Wars fans, and they're already battling MCU fans. They really didn't want to battle the Whovians right now. And Disney Plus, if they wanted it canceled, it would have been canceled already. They cancel stuff every single week. They cancel their own stuff. Hello?
Willow, they canceled Willow, and they scrubbed that off.
They canceled Willow. They canceled if you remember Witch from what's that thing they always had, Escape from Witch Mountain and stuff like that. They were doing all those things, all new stuff. They canceled stuff every week. So
She-Hulk, I think She-Hulk.
Yeah, She-Hulk, and the Acolyte. They canceled it so much that they removed everything from. They removed everything from Disney Plus. So if Doctor was in jeopardy, then they would have made that determination already. They wouldn't have paid for Comic-Con to build the TARDIS set, all this stuff. So as far as I was told, they're in January they're filming stuff without Shooty because he's not ready, but they will film in February with Shooty, and they're filming season 3, and he's doing 8 episodes plus the Christmas special.
So when you see, I'm trying to, like every Doctor Who fan, I'm trying to look at the little bits of clues that don't seem to link. You say RTD might be given as red herrings. And that in many ways, that's what JNT.
He's lying constantly. Yeah, he can't tell. Yeah.
Well, that's what they should do. It's fun.
But you've got the TV rights here that maybe it just happens to be the Robert Banks Stewart estate this time, or it could be part of something else. Obviously, RTD and Bad Wolf can't announce anything because one thing is production, one thing is, it's been attached to possibly back catalogs. That's another issue. So let's not announce anything because once we know, I mean, if you knew Disney was getting the back catalog, they're getting season 3, the whole thing's over. So I do see, you can see there's a lot of different things going on. It looks positive. It certainly doesn't look as though things are going wrong. It just looks as though they're delaying a big announcement. So I can see what you mean, Matrix Lord. That, and I'm mentioning that because we all know in all our streams and as Doctor Who fans, all these things are coming up in the news, and I think it does look as though there's something going on. But
I just don't want anybody to think that Shooty Gat was an idiot. I mean, he's not going to make up that he's filming season 3 from his own mind. No, he knows he has to film season 3 because he made agreements. He made these 2 movies. He made the music video. He did the play. Now he's free to film. So it's just a matter of what I was talking to you about the other day. Disney Plus has to have a placement for season 3. Season 2, I'm sorry, right? So in other words, you're never going to have Doctor Who and an MCU show or a Star Wars show at the exact same time, right? So I was saying, well, when the hell are they going to release season 2? Because Daredevil starts in March. So you're not going to be anywhere near Daredevil. So is there anything in January or February? And if you do January, and if you're rushing to get it done before Daredevil, then you do what you did with season 1. You put 2 episodes in to start it, and then you do the 2-part finale, but you bang it out like you did with Agatha. You did two episodes to start, 2 episodes to end. You finish it off way before you're supposed to, and then you have time. So if the plan was for them to film in January a little bit, because shooting's not ready, and then film mostly in February, that would mean that they would have to air Doctor Who in January, and then they would film and not tell you and say, oh, by the way, Doctor Who is approved. They filmed yesterday. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I would think that the moment Doctor Who is announced, you know, they'll tell you, okay, they're filming, but it's just a matter of placement. Now, is there anything coming on Disney Plus in January that's MCU or Star Wars? I'm not really sure, you know, but I know that if that's the case, and if they're too worried about it, then they're going to wait all the way till April or May, because I think there's a window where Daredevil is going to air. Then I think there's going to be Ironheart's also another show, and they also have the spinoff too, where they're deciding if they want to do what they did with like Children of Earth with Torchwood. Do you want to release it all at once? Do you want to release it in a week, or do you want to space it out?
Yeah,
you know. And also the season's connected with that too. So if you're having the Silurians in the Christmas special, you're going to have them probably in season 2. That's going to lead into
it's a link. Yeah,
we'll get an announcement at the end of the Christmas special. I don't think.
Yeah, Christmas special is going to have the trailer, and then they're going to say Doctor Who will return.
Coming in, ...
And if you're not going to get an announcement on Children in Need, and if you're not going to get an announcement on the anniversary of Doctor Who on the 23rd of November, then you're going to have it the trailer after the Christmas special. It's going to be Doctor Who will return this date.
And children, you know, land between your land and sea or whatever coming. ...
So one thing I want to say, since this is all under the umbrella of, you know, politics, behind the scenes, intrigue, and all the rest of it. Well, I don't think I'll ask the panel just a yes or no. So, Michael, would you really love to have another episode like Rogue?
No. Never.
Matrix Lord, would you like an episode?
That was the worst pile of monkey you know what I've ever seen, and
that was the worst episode I've ever seen. It was
worst episode I've ever seen, and I felt there was such a disrespect to the people that the Doctor was in love with Rhodes Tyler, with River Song, to completely where you would build characterization and build up years worth of romance and love, to basically just say, I'm completely in love with this person and we never even went on a date or kissed or whatever. And I'm so emotionally messed up that I can't even save my companion right now. And I'm crying. This really turned me off to Doctor Who. But then when I really looked into it, I'm like, oh, it's from the Loki writer.
Yeah. But this is what concerned me, which was, you know, season 2, I don't know who the writers are. They'll announce them, and then season 3.
But this was from the writer he blasted from Rogue.
Yeah, but he does say in one of the interviews this summer, he said, "I hugely admire Kate Herron's work on Loki. Obviously, I wanted women writing, and I'm aware that we haven't got enough women writing on, or writers of color, which we're fixing in the next series to come. Kate and I made contact over Loki, and she then introduced me to Brioni, who might not be so well known, blah, blah, blah." Now, the point is, okay, yes, get new blood.
Let's talk about the reality of that, though, because he bashed the living crap out of her, which he's trying to bury, that it never happened. He ripped her to shreds, saying that this is not how Loki would be as a gay, whatever, and everything. And Disney Plus, because they went to Disney Plus to get Doctor Who, Disney Plus made him talk to her. So I'm pretty sure Disney Plus influenced him to make peace with her and basically hire her. because you don't go from bashing the crap out of somebody really bad. Because he was really, when Russell was mad at somebody, he really digs into them, and he really digged into her. So there was nothing about admiring her at all. He was bashing her, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, now we're under the Disney Plus umbrella. We need to play nice.
But the trouble is, and look, I can understand the statement, we need fresh blood in writing. Of course we do. That's why Doctor Who's lasted 61 years. You can't just have the same writer. That's why I think RTD sometimes is leaning on himself too much. He needs to kind of spread the load. But if he's talking about this writer, all I can judge her on in Doctor Who is Rogue, and that was the furthest from Doctor Who I have ever seen. So if you're going to get new writers in, what's the vetting procedure? Because, of course, as part of my umbrella theme, DEI, merit. What happened to meritocracy? What happened to, are you a science fiction writer?
There needs to be
when this episode came out, I made this GIF for when it actually came out. R.I.P. Doctor Who. I did this one.
You need people that are science fiction writers. Basically,
it was terrible.
And I enjoyed the episode when it came out at the time. Because again, I love Regency era stuff. But do I want to see another episode like that? No.
I purely hate that episode. Well, no, I will never watch it again.
It was just basically that the Doctor and people have always said that in over a period of time where you've got to know the characters that have interacted with the Doctor, and the Doctor has slowly formed a natural progression in their relationships. This episode, and we have talked about this a million times, haven't we, Brendan, that this was so uncharacteristic for this such a well-defined character of all the years that it wasn't Doctor Who. This isn't the Doctor. And that was the problem.
And that's why
it was so wrong. It just didn't fit in with
that's why when we say, behind the scenes of the Bad Wolf and Disney and BBC, we're saying we want writers of color, women writers. You go, well, in a way, I can go with those ticks because we need fresh blood. But your judgment in this case, I know what Matrix Lord is saying, and I don't know that context, but I'm judging it just on face value. Well, the face value it was a bad choice.
It was beyond a bad choice.
You can't tell me if you don't look really hard enough and foster good talent that you can't find somebody who has experienced writing sci-fi that fits those boxes. You cannot tell me it's not out there.
Look at how hard it is for him to fall in love. Like he wouldn't, then you would find out, he loved, Sarah Jane, but he never showed emotion about it, right? How could you just show every emotion there is in 5 seconds towards this person you don't even know? Like it doesn't make any sense, and it goes back to
the romance writer trying to write sci-fi.
And it goes back to the argument: well, is he half a doctor because he was split in half? Is he acting differently?
Now that is a good idea. Now that's something which would give Rogue a bit more credibility. If the Doctor is different because he's half of who he used to be, there's like a sort of side effect that he's perhaps putting on more human traits and having more of a sexual persona because he isn't properly the Doctor. He's like half the ass.
It's like the Metacrisis using the DNA of Donna Noble to make the Doctor, the Metacrisis Doctor, and the Doctor being part Donna, technically.
I kind of like that idea. That actually gives it a bit more.
Well, you see, it worries me because it sounds almost like Half Human Doctor Who movie 96. It also tells me that if this is the case, RTD has done the bi-generation just to have soap opera Doctor Who for a few years, which is cheating. Rogue is one of those, isn't it? That's out there. It's probably using the non-meritocracy that's going on in some of these institutions now. Our keeper of the Matrix has got another story with political narrative in it from the past. So let's take a look at that now. Well, in our trawl in the treasures of classic Who to see how politics has been used and utilized by different writers and different stories, our Matrix keeper went to the archives and mentioned the Sunmakers. Why have you picked that one?
Because, Brendan, it's a perfect example of a writer using a real-life example or situation to craft a story. Now, Robert Holmes, the brilliant late Robert Holmes, wrote this story, and it came about because he got a huge tax bill And he was just so frustrated with his dealings with, trying to get it worked out and everything sorted out with the inland revenue. So you don't need to be, a diehard fan of Who to see that this is a story about high taxation, bureaucracy, gone mad, all those sort of things. But he also put in a lot of subtle references to British tax and things. And he actually wanted to make this story a lot more political. But Graham Williams, the producer, said, no, you can't do that, Robert, because if you do that, it will become too controversial and will push fans away, because obviously you're going to have two sets of, people on the political spectrum who watch Who.
I find it funny though, really. If you really think of the Sunmakers, we see the Collector. Where who was the one who gets thrown over the? At the end they actually kill him, don't they? They forgotten his name now.
Yeah, the revenue. I can't remember his name. I said,
is he the Gatherer?
Yeah, the Gatherer.
So that's it. So you've got the Gatherer and the Collector. But what I found fascinating on this massive story about tax, and every mum and dad watching would have sussed it out. Of course, the kids didn't understand the P45 stuff and everything. However, I find it funny, since everybody says the BBC and a lot of the writers lean slightly to the left. I find it fascinating that this story about tax, and let's face it, if you talk about any government or any party that is on the left, they tend to want more benefits, more welfare state, so therefore higher taxes. And I find it really interesting that therefore taxes are good, is the message. But the story is that collecting people's taxes is screwing them, is making life difficult, it's making them sweat. You've got almost that underworld because they're not in the sewers, but they're kind of in pipes and everything down below. And you get this idea that tax oppresses and it's just greed. And yet it's funny that leftist writers should be arguing that tax is amazing because we can spread the state and its welfare.
Exactly, Brendan. And there's a lovely quote, in the show where Leela, who's trying to understand, this whole taxation thing, and she says to the doctor, so these taxes, they are like sacrifices to tribal gods. And the doctor says, well, roughly speaking, only paying taxes is a lot more painful. And so you can, just from those lines, you can see where Robert Holmes came from, where his position was, that doesn't matter how much tax you pay, it seems to be never enough.
Which is how a lot of us feel when you do a tax return or something, or just pay your taxes, pay as you earn, or whatever, which way you do it. But it's just so funny because we know whatever political, background you've got, taxes are to pay for services as we see it, which is normally seen as a good thing when you're on the left. So I just find it funny that in this story, which I suppose I know what we're saying is Robert Holmes, he had a tax return to fill in. It's an irritation. He kind of sprinkled all his kind of irritation and frustration with having to do all this in a nice story. And it had that lovely pantomime level where there was stuff for the adults pitched over the kids, but there was a story there because actually that steaming way of dying and everything was brutal. If you don't pay your tax, you don't go to jail or get fined more heavily. You get steamed.
That's quite right too, Brendan. And something that people might be interested in that I learned was that Henry Wolfe, who played the Collector, as you might know him, he had very bushy eyebrows. I thought that was makeup, but it wasn't. They were his eyebrows. And he was chosen because apparently Dennis Healey, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, had very bushy eyebrows too. So that was their subtle reference to, look, this is Dennis Healey we're talking about.
So what you're saying, and it's true. If anyone types in Chancellor of the Exchequer in the 1970s, around the 1977-78 period, you've got Dennis Healey, and he was famous for the eyebrows. And if they had spitting, I'm sure he was in Spitting Image. So when you have political satire and political parody, you make a big thing of a feature. And Robert Holmes, one of our best Doctor Who writers, if not the best, has actually used it in this Sunmaker's story. So there's another one from the vaults, everybody. A classic one. Should be seen as light-hearted humour. It was the Graham Williams years, but there were some spiky points about tax, and I find slightly ironic in some ways. Well, thanks to the keeper of the Matrix, but I have to say, there's so many stories that kind of, touch on political and social consciousness, as Den of the Geek says. Anyone who thinks Doctor Who hasn't always used its storytelling for politically and socially conscious ends hasn't been paying attention. Well, we're not those. We understand that. It was interesting that Aberystwyth University also had a very serious kind of thesis when Doctor Who was at 60. The show has always tapped into political issues, but never more so than in the 70s, their claim. Even classic Doctor Who was a healthy cynicism towards politicians and politics in general, starting with a prehistoric morality play to the era where the script professed a desire to use the show to try and bring down Margaret Thatcher's government. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and I could show you from the beginning, the politics there was all about who had the secret to fire and all the rest of it. But do you think Doctor Who, my concern when we started this show tonight was damage to Doctor Who when it involves politics or all that, but Doctor Who, when it's on the money, can weave a political narrative in for impact. To me, when it feels as though you can see the message, how it's been written, where it's been placed, and why it's there, and people call it preaching, that's when it doesn't work. But I can think of Curse of Peladon, I can think of Green Death. Yes, the 70s did have them, but Andrew Cartmel did an awful lot of politics in the 80s, didn't he? And I think we'd then be missing Salamander in Enemy of the World. There's so many interesting ones. But going around the panel, can you think of Doctor Who stories where the kind of political undertones worked well and where they were a very bad mismatch?
I like the one where the master was Harold Saxon, Prime Minister. I thought that worked well because he's so like that, and he represented where he gassed all the politicians, and he's like, like in reality, oh, you backed me when my poll numbers were up and everything, and you're all fake. I mean, that was taking a jab at politics and joking with politics. That works, but when you really try to do stuff like they did with the arachnids and stuff like that, like the Trump type, I don't think that worked.
Another one where I think it worked really well is Vengeance on Varos. The idea of bread and circus for the crowd, of this political government entities viewed around making these horrible videos to give to the universe. And that's another great one about bread and circuses.
To be honest, the more I look at Vengeance on Varos, I'm fascinated at different levels. I was fascinated at the time, about...
It's very prescient for today. It's very prescient.
And it is actually worrying because this whole idea that the governor has to just be a populist and please the people, otherwise he's turfed out, is very prescient, really. And I mean, in any country, I'm not linking it to America. I'm just saying, in liberal democracies, it's a tricky one. If you think your politician is just saying things to please you, that's not what you want. You want a leader. You want a visionary.
And also the bread and circuses of we're being brainwashed, or the videos or the cover for a really corrupt government system. But here, we'll give you more. We'll give you more, merch. We'll give you more, something to take your mind off of it.
I find it interesting that while it focused on TV violence, Vengeance on Varos, the issue, I think, that I would argue from a more universal scale is that a lot of our television has gone semi-pornographic, has to have sex in, sexual titillation. And so actually, obviously, this is a kids drama production, Vengeance on Varos. They couldn't go down that angle. But it's interesting that we all talked about video nasties and stuff like that in the 80s. But actually, it seems that dramas have to have more graphic sex than you ever saw before. And we've seemed to have gone that way. It's just interesting. But I think Philip Martin was pretty much on the money at the time.
I think Genesis of the Daleks reminds me, obviously, of the politics of like a Nazi kind of parallels with the Daleks and the Thals and the Khaleds. That's the one that comes to mind as soon as I think of a political sort of story where, it was obviously the beginning of the Daleks, but you had this war between the Thals and the Khaleds, and I don't know why, but that's the thing that springs to mind when I think about it first of all, because it was interesting parallel with World War II, Nazism, and stuff like that.
It's interesting, isn't it, Michael, that, Sidney Newman notoriously said, I don't want bug-eyed monsters, and that's where he had a little moment with Verity Lambert. But from the Daleks onwards, the Dalek story, and yes, leading to Genesis, and a lot of the Dalek stories, Planet of the Daleks has a pacifist message in, or war, don't go back and say how war's great. It always had these messages, which I think were great, really. And
when you tell the story, don't glorify it. Remember those you lost.
Yes. In a science fiction background with aliens. That's the clever thing. It's obviously giving a message, but it's hidden behind a kind of sci-fi curtain. And if anybody with any intelligence will recognize what the stories are trying to parallel real life political aspects which have happened on Earth. So it is quite interesting how they do that. And they do that in all sorts of science fiction shows.
And also speaks of words like my grandpa was in World War II, Vietnam and Korea, and he never talked about the war or anything. And again, is where he went to war. He didn't like war, but he went to war to keep, what he thought his ideals were, to keep, American democracy free. It's a very astute way, an intelligent way, and it comes from those guys who were in World War II, where they saw horrors beyond horrors.
It was always interesting because the Thals, he had to encourage, like Ian did. Ian Chesterton did that classic bit to get them to fight for your woman, so to speak.
Yeah,
very 60s. But to get a rise out of somebody. But you see, the Dalek stories in themselves. You mentioned Genesis, and Genesis has that. Okay, we've got the Daleks, we've got genocide, we've got all that stuff. But actually, one of the things I was fascinated by as a 6-year-old, and still am now, is that speech with Davros when he talked about that hypothesis. If you could do this, that the virus, would you release it and all the rest of it? And that was it. It's kind of when you push science too far. I thought that was really well landed. And the other speech, it's a famous one. I'm no surprise here. But I love the way Sarah's argument, do I have the right?
Do I have the right? Yeah.
But I loved, as a kid, I don't understand politics as a kid, but when I was hearing Sarah saying, think of all the worlds, that would
you
not
be
know
saving,
about.
and
then he said, but that's important that the Daleks are known, so everybody, like allies, Rebel Alliance goes against.
Realize just exactly,
And how many cultures came together, and how many peoples came together, and had like allies. World War II analogy. The allies come together. We may not have, the Western Bloc may not have approved of communist Russia, but to defeat the Nazis.
And that's good writing.
Star Wars did it. You referenced Star Wars, but we all know you get the Rebel Alliance. Sci-fi loves to do that you have all these disparate populations across the universe, but they will meet. The Galactic Federation.
Star Trek. Let this be your last battlefield, which is a fantastic story about racism. And it's sci-fi can do it very, very well. And obviously Doctor Who could do it very well as well. But it's just
just needs to have the right writers and the right.
But now it's going in the wrong direction, I feel.
There was back then they had to train and be aware of all the greats of literature. And also these were gentlemen and some women who had life experience. These are people who went to war. These are women who grew up during the Blitz, who saw bombs coming down from the sky, who saw dead children. And I don't know. There's the argument: does good times produce soft men, and does hard times produce strong men?
Oh, and obviously, Case of Androzani is another great example, Brendan. Yeah, fantastic episode for that.
And again, I was going into my teenage years then, but again, Robert Holmes was pushing me beyond my limit. So Genesis pushed me, like I've just said, and in Caves of Androzani, it's gritty, it's realistic. There's all that great stuff. But what I learned from it as just a teenager was, again, the politics, how the machinations. What drove people to revenge? What drove people to? There was so. Because it's a dark story. Because does anybody survive? You have the secretary.
Perry survives. She's about the only one.
Perry and the secretary. Oh, I would love to see a sequel on that secretary. Oh my gosh, she was
and of course, when Morgus pushes the president down the lift, all those little moments, and of course, just to see these politicians just petty jealousy and greed, of course. And
and then in the Target novels, he turns to the secretary and goes and have the elevator lift technician executed for this.
Yeah. Well, classic. Yeah. Get somebody else to blame. It's classic. Yeah. Framing's a good one, isn't it? Although
and then she knows everything and turns and frames him. Oh, and takes off his money. Oh, she's evil. I love her.
So I mean, when I showed that Trumpian character earlier, you go back and you think, well, we had Salamander. Now, he wasn't Trumpian, of course he wasn't, but we've always had that kind of world. Sci-fi loves this, doesn't it? You have a world leader for some reason who oppresses so much. And of course, I think stuff like Salamander always takes me back to 1984, where basically behind the scenes, the party members are having wine and chocolate and all the things that are banned. They have their privileges and the rest of us are stuffed.
But also shows what a darn good actor Patrick Troughton was to play both.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was good in the
He doesn't, I think a lot of some of them, we don't give them credit for acting. One of them is Patrick Troughton because he plays the buffoon, but he was a really good actor in this.
Yes, he was.
So, I mean, gosh, we tributing Doctor Who for some good stories here. Gosh, we better watch ourselves.
Well, yeah, exactly.
We're not against political in Who, because some of them say, "Oh, you're
against." But nowadays they're ruining it because they're trying to make it political and in a wrong message.
Okay, so but why do they get it so wrong in 2024 compared to 1973 or when they made these old?
Because nowadays all these writers, these showrunners are pushing their own agendas rather than like. If you take a job as a showrunner and a writer, why can't you just write the show? Why do you have to implement what you believe or what you want into it to make it where you're using Doctor Who as an outlet to push this agenda or that agenda or that agenda? It's not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be just write for Doctor Who and sci-fi and stop trying to tell us we have to use pronouns. Tell us we have to do this. Tell us we have to do that. It's just getting people want to escape, like we were talking about Doctor Who. They want to watch Doctor Who. It's fantasy, but now you're putting it too real. Where people are like, oh, now you got to teach me about pronouns. Oh, now you got to do this, and they get turned off.
In 1960s and 1970s, the same thing in the United States. They had to get past the censors. So you can't say, oh, no, I'm actually not talking about the current, I'm not talking about the Vietnam War. I'm talking about the Civil War. And there's episodes of Western shows. Bonanza did an episode where they had Confederate or Union veterans coming home and everyone was shunning them. So we're not, and that was an allegory for the Vietnam guys coming home and being shunned. And so they go back and say, oh, we're not talking about Vietnam. We're talking about the Civil War.
But that's the very point, Michelle, isn't it? That science fiction, if us lovers of science fiction know that it always does a what if, but it so that you don't get censored and so you don't get into trouble from the government you're maybe writing about, you place it on some distant planet.
World. And it's a parallel.
And exactly. While censorship is wrong, and I'm against censorship, at the same time, maybe it's created a conundrum where there was more creative writers when you had you can't put that out there, or you can't make it too clear.
You can be really very unsubtle. Like I've got a planet where there's two politician parties on the alien world of Trebor, one party called the Conservatives, and the other party called the Paybor, and they're and you could do these stories, but it's not real. Although it is, it's hidden. But obviously, that's very obvious.
Although we've seen the issue with Sheila Hancock playing a very Thatcher type.
Oh yes, I remember. Yes,
you can see where it gets clunky. Yeah. But I want to mention, since we're talking about sci-fi when it works, when it doesn't. Obviously, I did the Malcolm Hulke miniseries a while back with Michael Herbert, and to be quite honest, and when we did the Invasion of the Dinosaurs review, I will applaud him because he doesn't make it binary. He always seems to make it the character who's a villainous character. He gives him a decent motivation. And of course, we always go back to that story in Invasion of the Dinosaurs where one of the villainous scientists had actually saved a kid when he was younger. And so you don't have, I think, to answer your question, Michael, now it's so clunky, I think, some of the writing with the messaging, partly because they haven't woven it in as well. But secondly, they are so insistent that there's one right way and one wrong way, rather than saying that shades.
Yeah, that's what made it used to be so interesting, because it wasn't so in your face. It was more blurred. It was more subtle.
Yeah.
But now it's like the whole season is political, like space babies.
That's what's so awful. That's
what kind of corporation would leave babies in space, and the politics behind, lawsuits and stuff like that.
It used to be written for a more intelligent audience. This is why you can have it more sort of subtle. And, now it's so in your face. It's so obvious. And to people like us who actually know a good story, they think, no, what are you doing? Stop banging us over the head with all this messaging. Give us stories which are vague with their ideas. Make it so that you have to work it out for yourself in a more sort of indirect way. They don't do that. That's what upsets me about contemporary stuff. It's so obvious in some of these stories, and it shouldn't be. We're more intelligent than that.
You need, as a viewer, I think the best way of doing things. You remember when you were a kid and you were reading and something was left open-ended, or you watch a movie and it was left open-ended. And I remember being a kid being furious about that because everything should have closure, but that's not real life. And actually, I think clever writing as we go through, mature writing says there's no easy answer.
No.
In fact, we'll leave your imagination to work it out.
Which actually makes it in some ways better.
Yeah, I like the cave monsters, the Silurians, where the Doctor is away from the unit, not too happy with the human race, but he doesn't kick off. You can see he's not happy. And it's left there. That kind of thing, I'm allowed to make a decision having watched it. Whether the Doctor's off on one or whether I side with the humorist, I'm allowed to, but not when it's rammed down your throat. And I think I think I'm trying to be fair, but I think ramming down the throat is how it feels.
It does. The whole season at 73 yards, everything's powerful.
Oh yeah,
you could find every episode is to do
Dot and Bubble was the most obvious. Dot and Bubble was the most obvious issue aspect of what they were trying to tell, and they could have made it so much more subtle. They could have made it so much more where you kind of think, and it was
and the worst is you throw in fantasy instead of sci-fi into it.
It's getting more fantasy now, isn't it?
Which is
less sci-fi.
Yes. Horrible.
Yeah.
Well, I find fantasy is an insult to science fiction lovers because science fiction, science fantasy.
I mean, Star Wars is more science fantasy than.
I'm gonna troll in the archives. The Keepers come up with an interesting one this time. This is from the Colin Baker period, the Two Doctors, and of course, politics isn't always about global politics like frontier and space style. Sometimes it's it gets down to identity politics, and sometimes it gets down to an issue. So you've picked the Two Doctors, Keeper.
Yes. Now, basically, I picked this one, Brendan, to showcase that it's not always about global issues or national issues. Sometimes it can be something that's very personal to the writer. Now, Robert Holmes was a vegetarian, and in this story, he is basically pushing his narrative that if you eat meat, you are bad, you are evil, you should be like me, and that's very much shown in the dialogue that Shockeye has about I want to taste the flesh of these humans, and when we see that scene where Jamie is being, tortured by Shockeye on the kitchen table, that was meant to horrify us, but that was Robert Holmes saying, well, how do you think those animals, how do you think that makes them feel? You're saying, Shockeye's saying humans don't have any feelings, they can't feel any pain, and he was being very, very political there. And in fact, the aliens, the androgums, is actually an anagram of the word gourmand.
Well, you had a lot of play on that, didn't you? Because you had gourmets, you had the eating scene in Seville, you had people look at gluttony. But do you know what? The scene to me that stands out, if he's trying to say to me, don't be a meat eater, isn't this a vile trade type of thing? It was the scene where Chesini was drinking the blood on the steps because that looked gross. And of course, it's a bit like if you're in a restaurant and they say, how do you like your steak? And if you say very rare, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't stand seeing the blood. And so he's played on that. So out of those, it's 3 episodes of 50 minutes, but gosh, it was that scene. Some found it too graphic, but I think if you're going to send a message of anti-meat, I think maybe that little moment there, including the bit you said about Fraser Hines's, the tenderizing of his flesh, was a bit on the money,
Exactly, and that's an interesting point seeing you bring up, Brendan, because that was meant to represent. If you look at the scientist Estari's face when he looks down at Cassini, and he suddenly comes to the realization, it doesn't matter how much I have augmented you, you are still basically an androgun. And what the writer is basically saying to us, it doesn't matter how advanced your science or your society is, you're still just cannibals. You're still not cannibals. You're still flesh eaters. You're still primitive, and he's basically saying to us, I'm a bit more advanced because I choose to think of the planet and the welfare of animals and everything like that.
Which brings in the point that when you do a polemic, when you do a political story, the danger with Doctor Who, seen as a children's program, remember where it was broadcast at what time normally, you have to be careful, surely, as writers and a production team, of propaganda. And this brings me to the point that if Two Doctors is one of our examples, if we bring it up to, say, present day, the Star Beast people had an issue with, partly because of the pronouns lecturing and the bi-generation hint at, because you had being a female presenting Doctor was better than a male presenting Time Lord. You had some messages about gender politics, identity politics. And because of how the narrative is put together, you could propagandize or lead people in a certain direction, which is fine for a gritty drama for adults. But when it is pitching at kids and teens, I wonder do you think, for example, I've mentioned Up to Date, but do you think Two Doctors is an example where it overstepped the mark?
Yes, I do think so, Brenda, because I would have been quite happy with that story if Robert Holmes had just basically said to the audience, I'm a vegetarian, I don't agree with meat eaters, but not beaten us over the head and made us feel bad about being meat eaters. And one of the quotes that sort of shows his disdain for us is when they go to land on planet Earth, and Shockeye says, and they've gone to Cassini's gone to the villa, she's read the mind of Donna Arana, and Shockeye says, what does she know about food? Her mind was full of her religions. She has, no interest in food. And he says, Madam, I am not interested in the beliefs of these primitives, just how they taste. And so he's saying, Robert Holmes is saying to us, see, you have no value. Your culture has no value because you're just primitive. You're just a primitive meat eater.
And what's interesting, and we can't even explore it now, but as a finishing point, I find it fascinating that if it was in the Petrie years, there was always a slight reference against the establishment. There was a reference against the military. And of course, the military are the Sontarans in this, and they were just used and abused, so to speak. But there was so many other ways you could have taken the story. But of course, if you're writing and you've got a political message, are you going on vegetarianism? Are you going to go on, military colonization? Are you going to go on scientific ethics? Because that's another way with the story it could have gone. You got a bit of it, but to be honest, the story was about vegetarianism, wasn't it? So there we go.
Well, yeah, that's right, Brendan. And just as a final point, I just wanted to point out something that may find interesting. This wasn't actually the story. The John Nathan Turner wanted to do a story set in America featuring the first Doctor, William Herndl, and Susan Foreman as Carol. Now, I don't know. I couldn't find out from my research whether it was going to be this story or something different. But because dear old Mr. Herndl died, that story didn't proceed. So it would be fascinating to find out if Robert Holmes had still done this as a political story or a personal message using those actors.
Yeah, the thread will tell us, we all try and pretend we're experts on Doctor Who, but there's levels of geek, and it's beyond my geek, but I'm not the keep of the Matrix. So thanks to Michael, the keep of the Matrix. He'll join us again. I'm going to get a rise out of you just to finish our show. We mentioned the Trumpian character played by Chris Noth. And of course, I did a stream ages ago, so I'm just using the thumbnail again. But if I just show you it here, the American impact on Doctor Who and/or the American tropes in Doctor Who, which two of our fellow panelists may have a word about, and me and Michael can just freely, just. I mean, you had Nixon was depicted in The Impossible Astronauts, just to remind you. You had A Town Like Mercy.
Oh,
yeah. We had Van Statten.
Yep.
You know, was he like an Elon? I have to say, I've read recently that the novel makes a more clear link with a kind of Elon Musk thing, billionaire, and Trump. Believe it or not, that's what I've been hearing. You've got the Doctor Who movie, where, of course, how was America depicted? It was supposed to be San Francisco.
Perry, you've got Perry as well, of course. And
of course, and you've got all the, you know, the murky guns in streets of San Francisco. I mean,
yeah.
Rosa, Michelle, hold back, Michelle. But yes, Rosa. Then, of course, the Daleks in Manhattan. Again, there was the kind of the greed angle. You Americans are terrible. Then you had the
the guy, the satellite guy,
Delta and the Bannermen, and was he supposed to be working for the FBI or something?
They were trying to track a satellite. I don't know who he was affiliated with, but something like that.
So you know, they were like a little double act, weren't they? So as you say, and Andrew Garfield, a young Andrew Garfield, of course, was in Daleks in Manhattan, and then you got that whole, you know, I saw Central Park just for the first time in my life about a month ago, and I couldn't imagine seeing this, but historically,
the theory is actually that is accurate for a Depression era of how it looked.
Yeah. So are we overall? I'm saying, are the British writers? Is the British Doctor Who program depicting America overall okay? Are we always obsessed with
I love you all dearly. You guys also can't do the accent right either. I mean, it's like the Americans, we can't do British accents right. You Brits can't do American accents right.
What about Nicola Bryant?
I would like
that one. She is the closest that I've heard, because she has actually, and everyone always makes fun. She actually has a California accent. She kind of has my accent.
I heard that she has the worst American accent. Most people I've heard from America say that Nicola Bryant's American accent was absolutely terrible.
Actually, I
don't know. I wouldn't know. I can't tell.
I will give Nicola Bryant a pass, though. Sometimes when she screams and she says "doctor," you can hear it. She has the more flatter California accent that I have.
What about that actor who's in Blue Peter, Brendan? And he appeared in The Chase on First Doctor, and he was an American in New York. Peter Purvis.
Yeah. Stephen Taylor.
His American accent wasn't very good, was it?
Well, the one who did American accent good is the actor who plays House in House, Dr. House.
Oh, yes.
And then the one who was in Damian Lewis does another really good American accent. He was in a series called Band of Brothers, and that was the first time us Americans saw him. And when then he was in another role, like, oh my gosh, he's British.
So Matrix Lord, I heard some you're disagreeable about this, aren't you, on the depictions of Americans overall?
I would rather the Doctor visit, like when they visit in New York, in Angels Take Manhattan, and different places in America, rather than try to do their spin on. And that's always the thing, is their spin, not what actually. You're supposed to be a time travel show, and you're supposed to try to get it as close to what it is as possible, but they've gotten it so wrong when they try to portray like American historical figures. So I would tend to rather don't do that, and just have the Doctor visit New York, have the Doctor visit Los Angeles, have the Doctor like actually visit. I mean, like film here and do that, because I find that way more interesting, because he's always in the UK, So it's like when he's in Times Square walking with Amy Pond, I'm like, oh my God, because I live here, and I know like that's real, and it's exciting to have the Weeping Angels with New York City. There's so many different stories you could actually do. Just imagine him battling the Daleks in New York City.
You can go to LA. I mean, you guys know LA is a foreign world of itself. We fully believe aliens are hiding out space aliens are hiding out in LA.
Yeah, especially with the Disney budget now, you could basically spend some money.
Golden age of Hollywood set. That would be fun.
I cannot believe it's come down to bidding for location film in America. I mean, you've had Independence Day. We always see the White House blown up. We always have some Armageddon version in New York. You know, you pick your movie. And now you're bidding for our Doctor Who to be over there longer. Oh my God!
No, here's the thing. Let me just say this. We should never do Doctor Who.
No,
ever. No, you could do Doctor Who, but you could film in our backyard. How about that?
You can come and visit.
I admit we can't touch Doctor Who. Okay, what they do with Paul McGann, please. But look, Moffat and Russell T Davies hated the Eighth Doctor, the whole thing, where they wanted to they didn't want Paul McGann to be the one to push the button to end the Time War. They didn't want his doctor to do it.
Oh,
so
I like Paul McGann, though. I thought he was good.
I love Paul McGann, but they didn't like it because they didn't choose that doctor. So that's the whole argument. But I just, you could film here, no influence from us. We'll give you the money, but it's always you guys. That's it. That's the way I feel.
One of the worst Doctor Who and things I've ever seen, and it's a Big Finish audio, and it's from the mid 2000s, and I forget what it's called, but it's a Dalek story with the Fifth Doctor and Nyssa, and they have an African American an African American Confederate who was on the side of the Confederacy during the American Civil War.
Okay.
Wow. That is one of the worst Doctor Who things I have ever heard.
So what about...
And their accents were awful.
What about the trope? I mean, earlier I was talking about the Davros problem, the trope about wheelchair and evil. And I said I'd come back to this. So are you concerned or just irritated, or you find it amusing, the tropes that American characters in Doctor Who tend to fall into that brash, loud, greed, capitalism.
I don't like that. All Americans are villains. I hate that. I don't like that at all, because you didn't portray one American as like a hero or anything. It's like
Matrix. If I threw it back,
he kind of saved y'all and helped save y'all in World War II.
Well, what if we did? Let's play that political table tennis then. I'll throw it back to you, Matrix Lord and Michelle. What about whack back? What about Hollywood loves to make a British character evil as well?
Oh, that's just as annoying too. I mean, we're tired of that too.
I mean, we've seen that in Star Wars, right? They're all the members of the Empire are all like British.
Yeah.
I think they do that because they try to make it that they're intellectual. More intellectual.
It's the accent, darling. It's the accent. But no, it's lazy too. I mean, and it's lazy writing.
What? Okay, I'm allowing you to kind of come up with an American character for a future series of a kind of American trope that could be depicted and needs to be depicted. It just has been ignored by Doctor Who. So we've had the greedy, we've had the capitalist, we've had the billionaire, we've had all those. Is there one way you think, I'd like to see what Doctor Who's take is on that type of American?
Actually, I'm not much of a need to have an American in Doctor Who, to be honest. He can come to America and still be British, and his companions can still be British, but I don't think we need an American on Doctor Who, really. It doesn't need
What about American Doctor? What a Doctor the American?
Oh, no.
Oh my God! Now you see.
Is that something I shouldn't even suggested, or what?
I'm against it, but you know.
Is the truthful thing, to round this up, with the way Disney have their policies and the BBC now, the DEI and everything, when Ncuti does eventually leave, we've had a female doctor, white, we've had Joe Martin, fugitive doctor, we've now had the first black male doctor. Is there a theory you've got that where we are, unless something changes, that the next doctor might be from Asia, the next doctor could, the thing is, we're never going to have the white males.
From what I understand from some insider knowledge, Russell T Davies, of course, will be the one to introduce the new doctor, because he said that he would do 4 seasons and then out. They're all about like records and scorecards. Like between him, Moffat, and Chibnall, they got this competition thing going, and Russell is leaning towards a female doctor again, but him doing it. And there's a lot of people trying to talk him out of it. Not that there's anything wrong with having a female doctor, but he's like leaning like 90%. And the whole thing would be for Disney Plus to, jump at it. It'd be exciting, new show, new doctor, but they're trying to get him out of it. I would think that, they're going to go to the diversity route again and do like maybe an Asian or maybe something else. But I don't think it should be about that anymore. I think it should be about the best person for the role.
Yes,
really.
I agree.
And to say we're only going to cast Asians for the doctor, we're only going to cast black actors. Like, I just think that that's the wrong message to do. You should should actually do auditions and not say you're doing auditions, but then always choosing either Olivia Colman. Oh no, okay, Jodie Whittaker. No, like you really need to do auditions to see who's the best for the role. And going back to the fact that they were going to do an American, which probably Disney Plus would probably want. There's been many actors that you're not aware of that would love to play the Doctor if given the chance. And Robert Downey Jr. is a huge Doctor fan, and he brought the Sonic Screwdriver to the awards ceremony. No, I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying that America, even Tom Holland would probably jump at the chance to be a Doctor, but I just think it should be British. It just should be not American.
I will wrap up and say, yes, I concur, but definitely meritocracy. I think one of our things we have said all tonight is when we think something else has been injected. So I want to say thank you to you all. But first of all, I'll say thanks to Claude, Solo One Sci-Fi Podcast. Please check his channel out. There's more episodes than that. So yes, please check that out. And of course, our new friend Matrix Lord, who obviously you've been busy as well. Check Matrix Lord 212 out and his channel. And Michelle, we've got seconds, but you can blab it quickly. Buy your book, yeah?
Han Fragsburg on Amazon and Amazon UK.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.